We're going to get ourselves started, and if people join, that's wonderful. Good morning. I'm happy to see familiar faces as well as some new friends. I'm inviting everyone as you get started to make sure your computer is muted so that we don't hear your background noise and those kinds of things. And if I do hear some noise coming through, know that I'm going to mute you, as is part of the managing of a meeting that has more than a few people in it. My name is Anna Perry. I'm the Executive Director of Seton Montessori Institute, and we have been hosting adult coursework and discussion and dialogue via Zoom for a few years now. And as we have all in Illinois and around the country been transitioning into our homes and into virtual spaces for supporting our children, supporting our families, supporting our staff within our school communities, it became really apparent this week that there were some needs from the Montessori community for quick tutorials on how to be more effective with using Zoom. And so I figured I can share some of what I've learned. I'm not an expert by any means, but I have been using Zoom now for quite a few years to run meetings, to host webinars. And in the last week, we have piloted using Zoom for morning meetings with children, for meetings with parents, and those kinds of things, as well as everyone has moved into their homes due to the coronavirus pandemic. If you have burning questions about how to, this morning, we're going to do a brief session 9 to 9:30 on how to use the Zoom setup as a prepared environment. So that's our focus for this first session. I am flexible to stay afterwards if there are particular questions or if you want specific advice in your situation until about 10 a.m. But I thought to do this upfront and give you some quick pointers. So I hope you are aware, Zoom.us very generously offered all schools a free account that allows you to host meetings for your school community that are longer than 40 minutes. Their free account allows up to 40-minute long meetings. If you go in today, tomorrow, the next day, during this time frame, they are still allowing schools, those individuals who are registering with a school-based email account, to have a free account allowing you to have more guests on one Zoom and to have an unlimited time frame for your meeting. So I would strongly suggest going to zoom.com, not zoom.com, I'm sorry, zoom.us, to their website that I can post in the chat box again, where you would have to put into that form your school's information. So if you check the chat box, the link is there. So that's step number one, is to sign your school up for a free Zoom account if you don't already have one. How many here have already been using Zoom before this week? Let's start with that. How many have used Zoom in the past? Yes? Thumbs up for yes, thumbs down for no. All right. So most are no's on this call. So this week, how many have already used Zoom before this session? Yes? I think this week a lot of people got some Zoom practice and some people not so much. So Zoom really is a robust tool. It allows for high quality video conference calls, and it lets people feel connected while we are physically apart, which is really where I see it serving such a great use at this time, during this particular home. Illinois yesterday announced a shelter-in-place order, so we have even more reason to be creating new opportunities for bonding. So my plan for the day is to host a couple of shorter webinars, because we've all done a lot of online stuff this week. So shorter bits, talking about specific things. This morning session is on prepared environment. We all understand that concept as Montessorians. So prepared environment, this needs to be your new prepared environment. How do you create a space? How do you create a culture around Zooming? How do you help people get used to this new context? Then this afternoon, we'll be talking, later this morning at 11 o'clock, we'll be talking about how to host a good Zoom session, how to manage it. So some of the techniques that I use in managing sessions for adults as well as sessions for children. So we'll be talking about that at 11 o'clock. And then this afternoon at 1:30, we're going to have a broader conversation about ways that we can use this technology, particularly to serve our 6 and under community, the children as well as their families. I invite you to bring your ideas if you have been using Zoom of things that have worked for you. This is a brave new world. This is not something I think any of us would ever have advocated for. Yeah, even just a couple of weeks ago, it was, oh my gosh, no, we would never do something like that as Montessorians. But when we have gotten into the process now, a week in, and seen the reactions of children as well as educators and parents to the use of this technology at a time when we cannot see each other, it is incredibly helpful. So that's at 1:30. All right. If you do have questions, I'm going to ask that you post them in the chat. I am recording this session, and the chat should be saved as part of that, so that will be something that you can see later on. One other Zoom tip as you're looking in, you can see the mute button is on the left-hand corner. I'm going to ask for today, since we have a larger group, that you leave the mute button on and you leave yourself muted unless you're called on. If you really have something you want to verbally say, but we're going to save that for after 9:30. Otherwise, please put your chats into the chat box. And then there's 2 options for how you're going to view this session. I did leave that everyone can see each other. So you can have speaker view, where you see primarily me and then a little strip of people at the top. It's a button in the top right-hand corner. Or you can have gallery view, and that lets you see the screen that I call the Brady Bunch screen, where you can see other people, what they're up to. Know that this is useful when we're meeting with staff, when we're meeting with parents, and when we're meeting with children. Really, you want, for morning meetings or those kinds of things, you want to coach people towards using the gallery view like I just did with you. Okay, so we're Zooming to learn about Zoom, and I'm going to do my best to model the kinds of actions that I would encourage you to take as you get into this new experience. So prepared environment, just like in our classrooms, we want to recognize that the first prepared environment is us. So before we got going, a few people were expressing their concerns about the use of technology, their newness to this different technology, and I want to encourage you to do as much practicing as you can, and as much kind of mental it's okayness to kind of jump in and go with it, because everybody is winging it right now. I keep saying educators are building the cart as it's quickly rolling down the hill. We're just adding the pieces on as it keeps going. This is a major piece of the cart, whether it's Zoom or it's a different technology. I know a lot of people are using Google as well. It's not one I'm as well versed in, but or Skype even has possibilities for group conferencing. But group video conferencing, I think, is going to become revolutionary during this time at home. And it allows us to continue to provide services to our families. For those in private school settings in particular, we want to continue to serve the families. There are many debates going on about how do we handle tuition and those kinds of things. Today we're not dealing with that, but this is a service that we can provide to families, and we can maintain those connections using this tool. So we first prepare ourselves, we get ourselves in the right mindset. If you're nervous about it, avoid the caffeine. Drink lots of water, get yourself going, because your tics, when you do them, if you're a nervous tick kind of person, it's going to be much worse for the other person's experience. Do you get what I'm saying? If I'm nervous about this and I'm doing little things, or if I'm bouncing in my seat, it's going to make it harder for other people to watch me. Or to stay with me, and people tend to tune out. Same with if you're on a handheld device versus a computer. Anybody who has any kind of motion sickness issues is going to be impacted by a Zoom call that's being led on a cell phone. Make sense? If someone's like this, it's impossible to hold your phone in a way that allows no movement. You can prop it up, but you're still always going to end up with that up the nose shot on a phone, in my experience. At some point, someone's going to see sides of you that you don't necessarily want them to see. So again, prepared environment, if at all possible, set yourself up for success. So once you've got yourself in the right frame of mind, I'd like you to think about your computer. Which device are you going to use? Is it a device that you can download the app to? The app is really robust. There are some settings that you have to manage on their Zoom cloud, like within your main account. But most of what you need to do for Zoom, you can do on the Zoom application, and it makes it much more streamlined. If you use any kind of Google-based email, I highly recommend connecting it to your Google account, because then it will allow you to connect it to your calendar. And you can send out calendar invites to staff members, for example. It allows for a whole bunch of facility. It lets you directly email people who you're trying to send an invitation to, for example. So the things that Zoom does tutorials for, I'm gonna really, again, strongly recommend that you check out it. Once you've downloaded it and you've got it on your computer, start going through their tutorials. They have short and sweet, really nice video tutorials for how to do all the basics of things. And I didn't spend the time you can't show Zoom while you're hosting a Zoom, so I would have to screen grab everything and screencast it. I'm not doing that today. I'm really just trying to give quick pointers for Montessorians to be able to get up and running and to present well and to present as professionally as possible. So check your computer. Can it download Zoom? I think Zoom works on most modern computers. They have the list of what the requirements are, but if you're on a Mac, if you're on a PC, it works. You can use Zoom successfully on a tablet or on a smartphone, but if you're going to do that, especially if you're hosting something, prop it up, make sure it can stand stably, and know that you're limited in how much you can manage a group session, because you have to swipe instead of using a mouse to control things. Right now, if I want to control any aspect of this, I can do it very easily with the control screen that I'm given. And if I'm on a tablet, I'm not given the full screen because you don't have as much space, and I have to use my finger, which ends up going in front of the camera, and that can be distracting as well. If it's your only form of technology, then so be it. You'll make it work. Check your internet speed in your house, and I would suggest checking it in different places. I'm going to show you another feature of Zoom right now while I show you how to check your internet speed, okay? There's something at the bottom of the Zoom window. On our account, we've left it open to everyone, because when we have adult students sharing a presentation, we want them to be able to share their screen. And so for you all, you can see there's a share button. Don't click it right now, because I'm going to show you how it works. I'm going to click it. And once I click it, it shows me a few different options. I typically choose desktop 1, because then it allows me to navigate my computer like I normally do. But you can tell it to choose a particular application if you'd like. So as I was saying before, here's the link to the K-12 verification form. Sorry, I can't see my whole screen. Let me move this down. Here is Zoom's basic education plan. And so you can see all the details about Zoom on here. Notice that if I go quickly like I would do if I were just reading for myself, I'm gonna, again, make people visually, it's jarring to see something moving very quickly on the screen. So it's much better if you're going to show things, move slowly, calmly, like you would in a classroom, you're going to give a calm experience to the participants in your program. So a speed test you can do by Googling the word speed test. This is a free internet speed test that you get from Google. And if I look up, I Googled the word speed test, and this is what comes up. You can also do it particular to your broadband server, your internet server. Our home uses Comcast Xfinity, so there's an Xfinity speed test that you can also take. But I'm going to show you, this is what I did before we started the call today. So 176 down and 11.7 up. And now while I'm doing a call, I've slowed down the internet in our house. So it's coming in, but it's still pretty strong. So you can see how fast up and down, download and upload are both important for you to be aware of for Zoom. Zoom shows you what their requirements are on their website as well. It's one of their first help sections, bandwidth requirements. Mbps is megabytes per second. You only need 1.2 for a simple one-to-one call. And I have a lot as of right now. But at different times of the day, your internet speed will be different. In different parts of your house, your internet speed will be different. Does that make sense? Any questions? If you have questions about something that I'm talking while we're going, let me know in the chat, or just unmute yourself briefly to ask. Someone unmuted. All right. So that's that one. So you've seen screen sharing as well, and you saw what happens when it first goes to screen share. You get a little strip of people on the side. You can adjust that so that it just shows the presenter who's speaking if it's too distracting to have too many people. But know that that's a possibility. All right, so we've talked about speed. We've talked about your computer. Your computer needs to have, obviously a camera helps a lot. If you do have a camera on your computer and you haven't, and you'd like to test it out, feel free to test it out right now. And then you also will need a computer that has a functional microphone and speakers. If it doesn't, some desktops don't have that built in, but when you plug in headphones, these give you a built-in, most headphones now come with a built-in microphone, and you have the speakers in your ears. And headphones are something that I strongly recommend you test out. Your house, if it's anything like mine, I have a 12-year-old and a 14-year-old. We have lots and lots of cheap headphones that people have bought along the way. Run through the laundry sometimes, so some of them work, some of them don't, and I would test them out before you get on a call. It makes an enormous difference whether you're using headphones or not to the audio quality. I'm going to show you really quick. I'm turning off Bluetooth right now. I'm using a Bluetooth headset, and now I'm not. So you can hear the difference in the audio quality when I'm on the headset versus when I'm not. I got AirPods for my birthday last year, and so these have been really lovely. The batteries run out quickly, so they run out after about an hour, which these days I'm doing a lot more video-based things. So I trade them out, one for the other, and I charge one while I have the other one in, because you only need one. They have a microphone that you need in your one ear. And it also tells my family I'm on a call right now and I'm not available to you, because the children are still around and we're all adjusting to this new way of life. So I strongly recommend headphones. Test out your headphones. Many of these simple Walgreens headphones work just fine, but I would test it out with a friend, with a spouse, with a teenager, someone who can give you honest feedback on the other side of what sounds better without the headphones or with the headphones. Sometimes headphones can make it worse if they have a broken wire or something inside of them. Okay, so headphones are good. I'm just checking that there isn't anything in the chat. If you use AirPods, headphones, does your audience hear everything else in the background? So that's the other big benefit of using the headphones is it mitigates the sound. It doesn't eliminate it. If my dog started barking right now because somebody came up to the door to drop something off, you would hear the dog barking, but you'll hear it much more if I don't have the headphones in. Make sense? If I don't have the headphones in, it blares. And we want to avoid really sharp, really loud noises when we can't control how loud people have their computers on the other side. And if all of a sudden something starts shrieking in the background, we have a problem. Now, I don't have young children at home. That's absolutely a factor in this. If you do, we have to make adjustments. I think people are being relatively forgiving. But again, think about your prepared environment. Is there a room with a door on it where when someone else is with your young children, you can be in that space? I've set myself up in my husband's office because he very often has worked from home in the past. And so he has an office with a door on it, which is great for this kind of session. But when I present later today, I'm going to be in my corner that I've set up for this stay-at-home experience, because I had to create a separate office space since all 4 in our family are working from home right now. Do kids also need to wear headphones to block out background noise in their house? We can talk about this more during the afternoon session on doing this with children. I don't recommend that kids wear headphones unless they're at the elementary level. Generally, you might have a particular child who you can speak with their parents to see, do they have over-the-ear headphones with a microphone built in? Some families do. Those can be good for a younger child, but then the parent really has to be attentive to how loud the sound is. As adults, we're really good at adjusting our volume, but children aren't, and sometimes, and it can cause damage. So I'm always really cautious with children with their ears and bodies. All right, so that was that one. We talked about headphones, we've given examples, and we've talked about the app. The other suggestion I'm going to give, and I think most people have figured this out by now, is I really encourage you to load Zoom with your name in it. When you're joining someone else's meeting, I can see Nez's name, I can see Maria, Elizabeth, I can see most names, but if it says, you can change it for every single meeting if you'd like to. It's just in your preferences. It's a very easy change. And then it avoids you having your spouse's name, and it lets everybody who's on the call see who's speaking. If you're a teacher for young children and the children know you by a particular name, you might consider changing it to Miss Anna for those calls. That's up to you and your preferences, but know that it is changeable, imminently changeable. All right, so that's fixing your name. I'm also going to encourage you now to think about your physical space. We all are in our homes. We're creating the spaces that make the most sense for our use. I'm going to encourage you to walk around with your computer and test things out, because in different spaces, your computer will run better and your background will look better. Think about lighting. For example, if I was going to regularly be hosting meetings here in this room, I would be probably moving over here to this side where I would get natural light on my face if it's a daytime meeting, and the background is still doable. Does that make sense? And you can see the difference. The other thing you can do that's just a very easy hack is to put the brightness up on your screen if it's too dark, because the screen itself will give you some brightness to your face. Turn on every light and think about adding some light into your physical space, because a dark appearance, especially if you're going to be with children, you want to be as visible as you can be. And those with darker skin tones have to work harder to get good light. Darker skin tones absorb the light more, and so you have to have additional lighting available. Too much light, though, is not a good thing either. If this was a bright sunny day, this would be way too much light for you, but here where I live, it's cloudy out today, so it's not too bad. Does that make sense? Questions? So think about lighting. Turn on every light you have available around you. You can hear, though, that moving around is loud. Could you hear me moving on my little wheelie chair? So I try, during most meetings, I don't move. I also suggest propping your computer up on a little stand or on like something phone book sized. You don't want your computer to be wobbling around. My children had a little desk for your lap that I use. So if I don't have the little desk, this is how my video looks. You can see the difference, yes? And if I do have the desk, then it holds the computer up towards eye level, which is a much more pleasant view. I strongly recommend always keeping your computer on a table because it's more stable. When it's on your lap, you're floating around. You don't realize how much you move. When you're sitting on the floor and you put it on a chair or an ottoman, there's often unevenness. And so you might be a little bit crooked. That can throw people off. Again, try and eliminate, think prepared environment. What are the things we can do to make this as comfortable an experience for the people who are going to be watching this? All right, so your computer is propped up a little bit more. In an ideal setting, you have the headphones in, you're trying to control for sound, for light, and you turn on every light. It might be that you add extra light. So I have a desktop lamp that I've added here that when I'm on at night, I turn on. Right now I have it just reflecting off the wall. And if I turn it off, you'll see the difference immediately. Do you see the difference in the lighting? And if I turned off the up above lights, you really see the difference. And this is with my screen at full brightness. So lighting makes a difference. Questions about lighting? Okay. And then I would encourage you to think about planning out what you're going to talk through so that you have your own step-by-step. I find that when we host meetings in person, we usually have an agenda. And I've been to a couple of Zoom meetings now that are being offered to the Montessori public where it was really loosely defined. That tends to leave things a little bit less comfortable. I'm thinking if you're hosting a parent meeting, you want the parents to know what they're coming for, what they're going to get out of it. You want this to feel like an organized space, just like they would feel if they were sitting on chairs in your classroom or in your multi-purpose space at your school, right? You want to tell them what is happening beforehand. You want to help them feel comfortable while they're there. You want to give them the expectations at the start of the meeting for how the meeting will be run. So like I said to you as you were joining in, before 9 o'clock, those who came early, I encourage them to test out their technology just because this is new for many and it lets you get comfortable with it. But once 9 o'clock started, I encouraged everybody, I'm going to leave. Since it's a larger group, I'm going to have everybody stay on mute. If I see that you're unmuted accidentally and you don't have something to add, I'm going to mute you again. And if I see anything visually that can become distracting, I may even turn off your camera. I've said that in many different groups and many different settings. It's a lot easier to say it up front and not have to do it than to have not said it and to have someone do something. So for adult meetings, I will say I've had adults make really silly choices while they're on the Zoom calls with me, and I've turned off their cameras, and I've even disconnected, removed some from meetings because of goofiness. It almost always happens when people are on their phones trying to log into a meeting, but I have had adults who have taken a call while also trying to do their yoga practice. And they have their camera on, and maybe they don't realize that everyone can see them, you know, in their downward dog, and it's not an attractive thing to look at unless you were there to look at yoga. Then it's just fine. If you're a yoga instructor and you're teaching yoga by Zoom, by all means, leave your camera on. But if you're not, we don't need to see that. So I'm going to turn off your camera and let you still listen. I've had adult participants who have signed on holding their phone while they were driving. I removed them from the meeting. I can't, the dog's barking. So now you can hear what happens when the dog barks. You know, you're the example of how to behave. And you're also like the teacher in a classroom, you're the moderator. You're the one helping to set the expectations. And if someone is doing something really goofy, we can say, you know what, I can see that right now isn't a good time for you to be on this meeting. I'll share the recording with you later, or something along those lines. But I really advocate for setting it up beforehand. Make sense? Questions? For children, I say that, so we've just this week started doing children's meetings, and we're going to talk about that a lot more later today at 1:30. But for children's meetings, we've said it to parents in emails, and we say it as we started these meetings, that, you know, if someone's having a hard time, or if there's too much noise in the background, too much going on in the background, we may turn off video feed. When we have done children's meetings, we have always left everybody's microphones off, especially children under 6. They don't really, at first especially, they don't get how this works. And so leaving microphones off will save everybody's ears from their excitement of seeing their teachers and their children. It still lets them participate fully. If you're singing a song, they can sing their hearts out and it won't deafen anybody, because it's not the same as sitting together on the line, and it's not the same as being in the same room. And you know, the child you'd always probably lean over and put your hand on their knee to be like, yeah, we're gonna bring it down now. The knowing look doesn't work through the computer, because I can give you the look, but you don't know if I'm looking at you, at you, at you, at you. So you have to use the technology to do the mitigating, to do the managing. Does that make sense? And the other thing I'm gonna give, just as we wrap up the first half hour of this, is to recognize that you're sharing parts of yourself in this experience. And so to curate what parts of yourself you're comfortable sharing and what parts of yourself you aren't. I've been saying to teachers all week that we have to very quickly get comfortable with opening up in ways that we never have had to before, but define your own boundaries. We keep emphasizing to all our staff within our lab schools that parents are going to feel differently connected to you after this. They're seeing you in your home. They're seeing parts of your home. Which parts are you showing? And what parts of home life are they being exposed to? You know, we've emphasized, please, our policy at Seton is that we don't friend parents. And we've re-emphasized that again, saying, you know, if you're getting parents friend requesting, it's much easier to just generically say to all, it's not our policy to I'm happy to maintain a connection, but we're not friends. We're not able to be friends on social media. And then if you're a leader within the school, you also have to live into that. Different schools have different policies, and you'll have to find your comfort level with it. And realize that the way what you put up, if I take a sip from my mug this way, or I take a sip from my mug this way, you might think different things about me. What parts we put in front of people, this was, you know, in the discount bin in Barnes and Noble. I love it. Do I want to show this? If I'm on a parent meeting, I don't know that I want to show this when I'm the presenter, right? And if I'm on a meeting with the children, I don't know that I want to show. It really depends on who you are. But you're showing parts of your life that you wouldn't necessarily show. Just be aware of what you're showing. Does that make sense? All right. I've done a few webinars on how to do good online learning, lead these for you that are designed for universities. Years ago, I did these, and there was a story that one of them told about her first times hosting webinars. And she had set up a space in her bedroom. She had a little corner of her bedroom that was a little office space, so it was nice. It was close. The sound was good. And she didn't realize it, but in her first recorded sessions that were recorded for permanent use on this online course, she had a portrait that her artist husband had drawn of her nude hanging on her wall behind her, that is now part of these recordings. Know what's in your background, know what you're putting out into the world, so that you are happy with the results. All right, well, that is my summary of prepared environment for Montessori educators. I am happy to take calls, take questions if you want. One other Zoom tip is that if you hold down your space bar while you're muted, it will temporarily unmute you. You have to hold it to unmute yourself. You can ask your question and then you can let it go and it'll mute you again. You can test it out, and if someone has a question, you can feel free to ask it at this point.
If I'm planning to use this for conferences, can I share photos at the same time?
You can share anything that you want to share from your background that you have. So when I'm going into a meeting, I'll always open up the things that I want to share beforehand, so that I don't have to go digging for it while I'm meeting with someone. But for example, before I opened this up this morning, I prepared a couple of photos that I want to share for later sessions that I can show you right now. Here's a session of one of our morning meetings for our lab school in North Barrington. And so I pulled up that photo in the background, so I could have a whole series of photos here if I wanted to. I think I have one other photo that's up. No, I have one other document that I'm going to be talking about later, but this is our schedule of morning meetings, and then of parent sessions and afternoon. Next week, we're adding Spanish and music to our Zooming calendar, because it's gone really well so far this week. But again, we'll be talking about that at a later session. Other questions about the how-tos of Zooming and prepared environment? Do I have privacy concerns with Zoom and young children? I definitely do. I want to make sure that if you are doing any sessions like this that are broader and more public, that you do have permissions to share any photos, to use any footage. I do have permission from the children and families. You might have noticed I blurred out names on that photo that I showed, because I have permission to use their images. I don't want to necessarily tell you their names, so that, you know, and if there's a phone number, sometimes Zoom has a phone number if someone's calling in. So I always try to make sure that I've done my homework before sharing any imagery. Within school context, if you're doing it as a photo sharing during a parent-teacher conference, you want to make sure that the children in the background you have permission for as well, if it's in a digital setting, because I can't control if you guys decided to screencast. If you were technologically advanced, you could record this session even if I didn't give you permission to record this session, because it's going out through digital media. And so I want to make sure I'm being responsible with the imagery that I use. Does that make sense? So if there's a no photo child on the list in the background, excuse me, I won't use it in a group setting or in a parent-teacher conference. Someone asked about where you look when you're hosting, the screen or the camera. I find it's almost impossible for me not to look at people's faces. But what I do to help make sure that I'm looking closer to the camera is I close my Zoom window up so that your faces are all much smaller on my camera, but at least I'm looking at the top half of my screen and not the bottom half of my screen. Does that make sense? That also works if I'm presenting and not trying to monitor faces as much. I can put it in presenter view where I can double check how I look, that I'm not doing anything outrageous. But I still prefer gallery view. You can also edit your gallery view to only show the people whose video is on, if you prefer. Something else I'm going to invite you to try, there's a little button at the bottom that says participants. And you can click on that, and if you have it in full screen, it shows up as a floating window. I don't like to use Zoom in full screen unless it's a screen share. So I usually have Zoom using half of my screen, the application itself, and then I can see the rest of my computer in the background. And I'll have participants up on it shows up on the right-hand side. If you click on it when you're not in full screen, you can try it now. And then I can scroll up and down and see the names of all the people. It also shows me if their cameras and microphones are on or off. And since I'm the moderator, I'm the host of this, I can also turn on and off people's cameras and microphones from that window. And it also lets me keep the chat window open so that I can have the chat function going. I don't think in video conferencing, the general norm, even in business, isn't that you're always looking at the camera so that you're doing one-to-one contact. If I was giving a keynote presentation, I might be working hard to keep that. But because we're in a dialogue together, and you know that you're all here and part of this, I think there is more acceptable eye floating to see everything else that's going on, if that makes sense. Other questions? So Zoom has additional features. I haven't signed myself up for a free, one of the free accounts since we've had a paid account for years. But with a paid account, I can break people into breakout rooms, which if your school has elementary students, that can be really useful if you're trying to host a book discussion, a novel study, or a conversation about a question. You can use breakout rooms to divide people up, let them share out, and then bring them back together again after a certain amount of time. And they also have something called polling, where I can put out a question and you would have to fill it out. Again, I don't know if that's part of the free subscription they're offering to schools. Someone asked if they asked for more clarification. We talked about that at the beginning. Here, I'll post the link again. So for those who join later, Zoom is offering a free subscription for schools during this crisis. Look in the chat box. There's a link to the form you have to fill out from a school's email address. Oop, I just sent that privately, sorry. Let me send that publicly. Pay attention to who you're sending things to as well, as I just modeled for you. You want to send things out to everybody. Be careful with the chats. People can privately chat you, and then you might be privately chatting them back and not realizing that it's private. That's what just happened to me. It's also why when I'm hosting the typical webinars that we host, and for all our classroom meetings and parent meetings, I always make sure that there are 2 people from my staff on every call. I didn't do it for these impromptu Zoom meetings that I just threw together yesterday 2 days ago when people were asking for this. But we typically have someone who is responsible as the moderator, the host doing the technical stuff, and someone else who is presenting. And that allows for, it's a backup plan. I think if I had a coughing fit and I couldn't talk, the other person could start talking. If my internet just dropped, which has happened to several of our staff members, all of a sudden, you know, AT&T does an upgrade and you lose internet signal for half an hour. If you're in the middle of hosting something during that half hour, that can be really awful. But then you have a second person who's on the call who can step right in and participate. And it lets someone else pay attention to the chat and manage the people. Within Zoom, you can designate co-hosts as well, so other people who can do the management of the application itself. Other questions? Lisa, you unmuted. If you want to test unmuting and saying hello, you're welcome to. If you want to test turning on your camera and figuring out your space and your lighting, feel free. I'm going to stop the recording at this point